If you're finding that you're addicted to sugars and you feel like routinely every day or every evening you have a craving for something sweet, this video is for you. There's a couple things I've learned in my own experience around sugar that's really helped me to transform my cravings or my addiction to sugar. And those things have to do with two things. One, physical things, and two, psychological. So as far as physical goes, I noticed that the more I learned about what I was eating and the psychology around binge eating, I actually realized that there were some physical things happening in my brain every time I ate processed foods. So processed foods with their sugar and fats and salts, they have this sort of combination that triggers the part of your brain that for some people can create addictive behaviors. And it's the same parts of the brain that get triggered by heroin or other such drugs, right? So when I started to learn this, I realized, oh, the more I'm eating processed foods, the more I'm actually creating an addictive trigger in my brain, and that's actually causing me to be more and more addicted and just want it more. So that was the first step of just not eating processed foods anymore and basically cutting out processed foods and getting my sweet fix from whole foods like fruits. And so the first step was just that shift, but then I still wanted sweet, sugary stuff and still crave things like ice cream and other such treats whenever it would, usually at the end of the evening. So when I looked at that, I started to think about, okay, so maybe I should stop trying to avoid having those things and actually allow myself to indulge in things like really good dark chocolate or other such sweet treats that I could just be very present with and truly get into the moment and savor them. And by doing that, I would feel more fulfilled. So that was practice number one. And the second part of that was then experimenting with the combination of carbs, fats, and proteins in my diet. And as I started to get comfortable eating sweet treats and things like that, I still found that I'd really want to eat a whole bunch of fruit or a whole lot of dark chocolate. And I thought, how could I curb this sort of inability to stop eating after a certain point? The quantities were just too massive, even if it was healthier sweets, the quantities were still massive. And so I started playing with a combination of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. And the more I started to incorporate whole grain carbohydrates and healthier fats, the less I craved sugar. And for the longest time, I had avoided carbs like the plague, because if you've heard any popular diet advice, you know that carbohydrates are like the demon or the evil entity that makes us gain weight. Well, I had avoided them for so long that I was actually filling up with sugar and craving sugar when carbohydrates were the things that were really satisfying to me. So I found when I was eating whole grain breads or wraps or oatmeal and things like that, I noticed that I didn't crave sugar anymore. So rather than at the end of the night I might have craved ice cream or cookies or something, I would instead have a bowl of oatmeal or a piece of whole grain bread. And I noticed that took away the craving for the sugar. And then that combined with healthier fats in my diet, like from avocados or healthy cuts of fish or meat, that started to completely shift my cravings and my ability to control my quantities because I had, I guess, the right balance of nutrients in my body then. So if you're struggling to kind of deal with your inability to stop craving sugar or your inability to control the quantity of sweet, sugary foods that you have on a regular basis, I invite you to try two things. One, eliminating processed foods from your diet if you're eating processed foods, and two, experiment with a combination of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and see if maybe amping up and eating a little bit more protein or maybe a little more fat or a little more carbohydrates actually helps you to start curbing your carbohydrate or your sugar cravings. If this helps you, or if you have other tips that have worked for you, I'd love to hear them. You can contact me on my website at Binge Eating Breakthrough. You can also download a free video course called Binge Eating Breakthrough at my website, bingeeatingbreakthrough.com. Thank you.